let me ask you, Mr. Mabunda said, do you think I'd make it as an auctioneer there?
I think you would.
You think
yeah.
I would?
Yeah, people who are in the entertainment center, most of them can.
Do you guys see yourselves as entertainers?
We are, of course.
Really?
Yes.
Joff?
Entertainers?
Yeah.
We just do it a lot faster, that's all.
And
we do it at warp speed.
Yeah, definitely.
We do.
My first, and I think people of my age will remember this, my first exposure to an auction of any form was actually in an advert. It was for a cigarette advert.
The Gunston ad.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I interviewed, years ago, I interviewed he was a Rhodesian.
He was.
Yeah.
Tobacco auctioneer.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is
Gunston.
By the way, I mean, Zimbabwe has some of the best auctioneers in the world.
I had a friend who used to live in Zimbabwe, and he was a tobacco buyer. And he said the speed at which these guys auctioned, you literally, the buyers walked with the auctioneer.
Same step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you just raised your number, and it
Correct.
was not
And it's
down.
on a conveyor. And they never stop.
Yeah.
They do between 3,000 and 5,000 bales a day as an auctioneer. So you're looking at one every 2 to 3 seconds.
Yeah.
That's it.
How did you get into this business?
I would say accidentally. I have an academic background, so I used to be a consultant, management strategy, and I got this 10-key job where I had to do everything up to disposing the assets. And because they didn't want to hire multiple suppliers, they hired me, and I had to hire the auctioneer. And when the auctioneer came at the tail end of the project,
Yeah.
I had produced reports, and the auctioneer came, did his magic, and I was fascinated.
And you decided to get into it.
Yes, initially I was marketing for them, and I got hooked. It's addictive.
Joff, how did you get into it?
It's about 18 years ago. It was also by fate, same as Tirhani. I answered an advert in a press in Cape Town, where I used to live, and have you considered being an auctioneer? My parents actually saw it, and I applied for the job with 100 people. Had a huge argument with one of the directors because he was from one of the opposing schools and doing post-matric and stealing our rugby players. So I thought, well, I've blown it. 5 days later, I was told I had the job, and carried furniture for about 6 months during the auctions. And after 6 months, one of the directors turned around and said, well, thanks very much, I've had enough, and there's the vendor roll, off you go. It was I think I changed colour. It was a complete disaster. I sold TVs, fridges, microwave stoves for 2 rand. It was a disaster. And then the next week it was 5 rand, the next week 10 rand, and here we are with Tirhani 18 years later. We sell real estate, big machinery. In fact, I don't think there's anything we haven't auctioned off.
I had a record sale in April. I sold a rhino for 490,000.
So you oaks literally will sell anything.
And
That's a big
even
one.
unwanted spouses. I don't know why people must divorce them.
We do. We say if it moves or if it doesn't move, we can auction it. There's
Yeah.
nothing we haven't done.
I mean, it's true what you're saying, because you open any newspaper these days, and all you see is auctions. And at first, when the recession started hitting us, I thought at that stage that it was really because people were desperate to get out of bonds in their houses and all the rest of it. So they were just trying to dispose of them as quickly as possible. But I mean, it's still happening here. I mean, the amount of commercial property and residential property that's available for auction on a daily basis is quite phenomenal.
But Jeremy, therein lies the myth. People think auctions are about distress property or whatever, distress sale.
Okay.
That's the perception that has been created because of, the sheriffs. And
Okay.
unfortunately, sheriffs are not auctioneers. Now, auctioneers today who are doing it professionally will thrive in a seller's market, not in a buyer's market. And a buyer's market, I'm referring to the recession you're talking about. That's a buyer's market.
Yeah.
And auctions will not work well in a buyer's market. They'll still move the assets, but they don't work well in a buyer's market. Auctions are when you want to sell your machine, and it's the only one in the area. The only way you can sell something that is hot is via auction, because you get people in one house and competitively they fight for the asset. Now you can even sell it for more than what it's worth in the market, because it depends on how bad the guys want it. And also the egos go in, and sometimes people get carried away. And I sold a Baki once for 50,000. It was worth about 15. The guy was wanting to show the other one how much he has in the pocket.
But now, Joff, this is an interesting thing that's come out here, and we're going to get on to talking about how to actually go into an auction, and as a buyer on an auction, what you need to look out for, and how to conduct yourself in an auction. We're going to get onto that in just a moment. But if that is the case, then do you think that in a lot of situations people undervalue an asset that they have, just as people in the entertainment industry, for example, have agents? So you, as the auctioneer, become the agent for the seller, which is me. And I have an agent who represents me, because I know if a client comes to me and says, we want you to do this function, MC this function for us, there's a very good chance that I will undersell myself, because I don't really know what I'm worth and what the client is prepared to pay. So that's where the agent comes in, and they push that price. Would you see yourself in that sort of role?
I would see all auctioneers in that sort of role. Tirhani is right. Perceptions have changed dramatically over the last decade, thanks to all the good work all our auctioneers are doing all over the country. As for value, that is why auctioneers work best. I mean, how do you sell a Picasso? You don't. You auction it. How do you determine a value on an incredibly rare and important painting? You can't. You have to put it on auction, so the public can show you what it's worth, what they're prepared to pay at that given day and time in a period in history. It's very difficult to put a Picasso in an art showroom and put a price tag of $100 million on it. It's worth what a willing buyer and a willing seller are prepared to pay. It's worth what your profession can do to a particular asset. If you are a sought after and experienced presenter, or a sought after and experienced auctioneer, obviously your services are a lot more in demand, and obviously you can do a better job. That's why I would imagine experience and studies and education are very, very important, especially in our industry.
Well, when he mentions a painting, maybe most people want to relate to paintings because it's a specialized, asset. But take a residential property. Mm-hmm. You tell me anyone can value a residential property.
Well, you've got your municipal values.
No. But there's no one, Jeremy, who can value a residential property. Commercial is different. There's lettable area, you can look at your cap rate and all that. Residential property, there's no one who can value a residential property.
It's an emotional buy.
Exactly. It depends on if it's close to a school and I want my kids to be walked to the school by a nanny, I'm prepared to buy at whatever price. But if you place it with an agent, you name a price and people will negotiate you down. But on auction, depending on how good the auctioneer is, if they do it properly, and you invite all the people who are interested in that particular property, if you have 5, and they want to buy it for what, in terms of utility value, the sky is the limit. You can exceed what you will perceive as market value. Because look at how it's valued property now, residential. They'll say there were sales here the past 6 months, and these sales were this much, so this one is this much. Is that a valuation? I'm afraid not.
Just remember, the bidding ascends. It never descends unless your auction is drunk, which hopefully will never happen.
And that's why, on that note, it's always best if you're selling high-end. I know they do multiple auction mostly at High Street. But high-end residential in places like Australia, where it's very prominent, more than 60% sells on auction, they do it on site.
How is the Consumer Protection Act affecting your industry?
It's not affecting it, it's helping it.
In what way?
We used to have, anyone in the past could just wake up and say, I'm an auctioneer.
Right.
It's not anymore, because you have to comply to a certain set of way of doing things as an auctioneer. In fact, it's not even enough, the provisions that are in the CPA Act. We would like a situation where the industry is fully regulated. The regulations that are provided for in the CPA Act and have not gone far enough, in our view.
In your view?
Yes.
Joff?
Tirhani's right. It's benefiting our industry greatly. What we've longed for many years, regulation and etc. This Consumer Protection Act is greatly helping the auction industry. It's regulating almost a best of breed policy with auctioneers. The days of anybody standing up on a soapbox and auctioning off something are gone. You need to be registered. You need to be regulated. You need to be experienced. You need not to have a criminal record, for instance. I mean, anybody used to be able to stand up. We do protect the consumer. We always have.
Yeah.
From that point of view, not too much has changed for us, and in fact, it's benefited us more than anything. Auctions are known for the old foot's toots clause, which I suppose you could call it. It's French for, it's your problem sort of thing. But it's not exactly the case. You do buy the property as you see it. There's also no cooling off period on an auction. Just a few small facts. People like dealing with auctioneers. It's fast, it's transparent. Our auctions, I think we do very, very little legal auctions, as you mentioned earlier. 90% of our sales are private, institutional instruction, a listed fund instruction, a private individual instructions. That's where we specialize.
Both of these gentlemen have got two very, very interesting auctions happening tomorrow. I want to get onto that. I want to get onto how you go into an auction. I want to try and see what their tricks are and see how it can benefit me. Okay.